Welcome to Coffee to Go, where we center ourselves in the scriptures, seasons, and holy days of the Christian tradition. I'm Karen Peter, and I'm here with Blake Smith, and we welcome you on the journey. Today is the fifth Sunday in the season following Epiphany, the season of light, and that is the topic of today's text. So we are hanging out with Jesus still on the mountain, if you listened last week. And this is taking place just after the teachings that are called the Beatitudes, but most of them are usually remembered as the Blesseds. And this is the next segment of the teaching Jesus does. Blake?
Yeah, and that's really important. So that we pick up that we're still talking to that crowd of marginalized folks who are the everyday disciples, not the elite of the society. So this is back in the 5th chapter of Matthew, and we're going to pick up at the 13th verse and read through the 20th verse. You are the salt of the earth, but if salt has lost its taste, how can its saltiness be restored? It is no longer good for anything, but is thrown out and trampled underfoot. You are the light of the world. A city built on a hill cannot be hid. You do not light a lamp and put it under a bushel basket. Rather, you put it on a lampstand, and it gives light to all in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father in heaven. Do not think that I have come to abolish the law or the prophets. I have come not to abolish, but to fulfill. For truly I tell you, until heaven and earth pass away, not one letter, not one stroke of a letter will pass from the law until all is accomplished. Therefore, whoever breaks one of the least of these commandments and teaches others to do the same will be called least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever does them and teaches them will be called great in the kingdom of heaven. For I tell you, unless your righteousness exceeds that of the scribes and Pharisees, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. Well, I just want to say,
kind of an indictment on the scribes and Pharisees, don't you think?
Yeah, it is, right?
Mm.
Yeah, well, I don't want to relate with them, but I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, where is the verse on sugar? Because Aaron, you are the salt and I am the sugar.
I am salty. That's true.
I read this and I thought, okay, yeah, this is for the salty people.
Yep.
And we like to pick out those times when Jesus gets a little salty, right? So
Yeah.
we feel that's when we see Jesus' humanity and we can connect with that. So anyway, why does this matter? Jesus is building on this idea, as we talked about last week, of God's favor resting on the vulnerable and those who are humbly engaged in kingdom practices like justice making and mercy and kindness. And he uses this, or he does this by using metaphors that are common and that we understand and that illustrate what this looks like lived out. So we can really connect with what salt does and with what light does. He's saying to be salty. Salt preserves and enhances the goodness of what it flavors. And salt that loses its flavor or purpose can no longer do so. I don't know how long it takes salt to lose its flavor, but I understand.
So I don't know either about salt losing flavor, but to me, the best analogy is Diet Coke. So I can't drink Diet Coke anymore, but I do love Diet Coke. However, if Diet Coke is like a year old in the can and you pop one open, it's gone flat and the aspartame is turned and all of a sudden it has no Diet Coke flavor. And so I thought of that when I was thinking about salt losing its flavor. It's kind of like popping open a Diet Coke and finding out it's flat and icky. So that's where I went with this. When he talked about there's no more, it can't enhance the goodness because it's not flavoring anything here.
That's a great example. I've never really been a Diet Coke drinker, but I do remember when a Diet Coke drinker in the family opened an old Diet Coke can. I had no idea that Diet Coke had expiration date. But I guess
But
it
it
does.
does.
Yeah, it does. So the other part, we talked about the salt, but the other thing that Jesus says is, "You are light on a hill," to shine our light, to illuminate God's goodness in community and individually is part of that we're called to. Jesus says, "You walk in the light, so let that light shine." In other words, be conspicuous, hold that light up. Be bold. We talked a little bit last week about taking some stances and taking action uh, in order to experience some of these things. So be bold in working for justice. Be kind and merciful in your dealings with others. Practice humility. Seek to recognize the divine presence in others. Unfortunately, in our culture, especially in the USA culture, I'll just claim it that way. Often, when we speak of a light on the hill, and it has been used in writings and in speeches, it's often referring to this idea that the USA is special. And we're exceptional. We're a light on the hill, and we need to shine that for the rest of the world to see. Zeta Maldonado Perez reminds us that it is an unfortunate misappropriation of the biblical text when we do this, because it's used typically for colonialist practices. Our way is better. We have the answers. You need to do it like us, then you too can be a light on a hill.
Exceptional. Yeah.
Yeah.
Ouch.
And
Nobody likes to hear that, but that's the reality.
it is. It is. And so what Jesus is talking about here, rather, is it's not a light to illuminate how special we are, and not to put on a stand, but held high as a light that shines brightness for others to be able to see. It's a light to shine so that we can practice justice, so that we can free the oppressed, that we can care for the hungry and the poor and the naked and the afflicted, and all of those groups and people that Jesus names throughout his ministry. This is what makes us conspicuous. This is how we shine our light. It's not to shine, and so people will look at us, but through our actions, we shine a light for the world, so so that the world can join in and be a part of this seeking justice for all. In some ways, it's a holy conspicuousness. So
I do like that term. That's a new term for me. So
yeah.
might be using that in some place.
To be the salt and light is to live out and illuminate God's goodness. Ultimately, that's kind of the summary. Divine favor, if we remember, rests upon those who live justice boldly and care for others generously. Again, in the midst of our current circumstances, especially in the USA, but happening, of course, all over the world, these are important actions for us to remember and ways for us to shine our light. It requires humility. And I know, Karen, you mentioned last week about standing in the way. Those who are standing up for justice are often putting themselves in the range of being targets. So it's not about standing on the hill separate and pointing to me and say, look, if you do what I do, you can be here too. It's being a light for justice. So anyway, some questions we might ask ourselves this week. What goodness do I bring out in others or in my community? Talked about the orchids. Plants lean toward the light. The light is sustenance. How am I leaning toward the light? By the way, we talked about orchids last week, not this week, but that came to mind as I was thinking about that question. We lean toward the light because the light is sustenance. Finally, the last question, where am I shining my light? Is it a light of justice, of kindness, of compassion? Where and how am I shining my light?
So we have a chance to kind of address those this week, Blake, as we figure out how we can experience this scripture. And I like the whole be salty and shine light aspect of these teachings. So I think maybe this week um, it's being the salt that flavors. It brings out the goodness of what it flavors. And I love that idea. So, how can I, with my words or actions, bring out the goodness of a situation or a relationship? How can I look for that intentionally, even if it's kind of a fraught situation? Am I willing to look for the goodness and kind of bring that to the forefront? And it made me think of the old hymn, look for the beautiful, look for the true. It's not in our hymnal anymore because the theology of that does not work for Community of Christ, but it was when I was a kid. So look for the beautiful, look for the true in a situation or a conversation or a relationship, and try to flavor that and bring out that goodness and highlight it. Illuminate it, use your light to bring attention to that goodness in the other person or in the situation or in the conversation. Um, when we illuminate with our light, like you said, we don't shine on us. We try to shine on behalf of others. And that's helps us remain in that situation of humility and being humble servants. So that's this week. Be salty, bring out the goodness of a situation, and illuminate it on behalf of others.
Yeah, that brings to mind just the thing. It was actually probably a two-way illumination because I was getting coffee at a little shop, and it had been a less than pleasant morning. Things had just been insane, and I was probably a little grumpy. And I can name that. But anyway, the barista just had this beautiful smile and was just so friendly. And as I stood there waiting for my coffee, my aura changed because of the illumination that she had with just a smile and kind words. It wasn't probably was what she's required to do for her job. I don't know, but it just came out so naturally. And I thanked her. I just said, you know what? I needed that smile today. Your smile is beautiful, and thank you. So she was a light on the hill for me, that really kind of reoriented my day. So that's something I think we can do for others as well. So our blessing today is by Rebecca Elson, and it comes from the book The Universe in Verse, 15 Portals to Wonder Through Science and Poetry. And this particular blessing is called Let There Always Be Light, Searching for Dark Matter. For this we go out dark nights, searching for the dimmest stars, for signs of unseen things, to weigh us down, to stop the universe from rushing on and on into its own beyond, till it exhausts itself and lies down cold, its last star going out. Whatever they turn out to be, let there be swarms of them, enough for immortality, always a star where we can warm ourselves. Let there even be enough to bring it back from its own edges, to bring us all so close that we ignite the bright spark of resurrection. All right, well, as always, thank you for joining us here at Coffee to Go. We hope that you'll join us next time for the next part of our journey through the liturgical seasons and holy days of the Christian tradition.